From the News 19 Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Efren Afante, giving you an update here on WLTX Plus on Hurricane Erin. The update from the National Hurricane Center as of right now, Hurricane Erin is now a Category 4 hurricane. Winds are still sustained at 150 miles an hour, gusting to 195. A Category 5 hurricane would have wind strength of 157 or greater, which we did have earlier today. In fact, the 11:20 a.m. update categorized it at that point as a Category 5. Well, it's still moving to the west at about 15 miles an hour. The pressure has now increased. So instead of decreasing, which makes it stronger, well, as a Category 4 now, it has a pressure of 934 millibars. At its strongest thus far, it was at 913. This is a 6-hour loop, and you can see a very well-defined eye, but it's kind of collapsing on itself. Well, that's indicative of it not as strong as a Category 5. But there's all indications that it will still intensify again. What happens when you have very strong hurricanes, that they can't keep their intensity as long, and they will cycle back and forth in its strength. Still have a tropical storm warning well off the coast, but still off the northern shores of Puerto Rico. The tropical storm watch, they have really continued, even though it's flashing, for Antigua as well as for Turks and Caicos. Well, its position right now is about 160 miles away from Antigua and about 150 miles away from Puerto Rico. That's the only position right now of any tropical cyclone in the Atlantic. And even though it is a Category 4, it is expected to cycle back up again, probably by as early as tonight for the 11 o'clock update, as a Category 5 hurricane again with 160 mile an hour winds. That'll continue through Sunday night. Then by Monday through Tuesday, it'll become a Category 4 again. It'll cycle back down to about 140 mile an hour sustained winds. By Wednesday evening, a Category 3, and then as it makes its way around Bermuda as a Category 3, but winds at 115 miles an hour. Its positioning throughout this 5-day track still puts it between Bermuda and the Southeast Atlantic. Everybody's just making sure that that's going to be the case. The thing is that it is rapidly intensified. If you ever heard of the phrase rapid intensification of a tropical cyclone, within a 24-hour period increases its sustained wind speed up by 35 miles an hour. That wasn't the case with Hurricane Erin. It intensified within 24 hours from a Category 1, and at that point, it has sustained winds of 75 miles an hour all the way up to the Category 5 of 160. Very, very rapid intensification. I don't recall in the last several decades where we've had that much intensification. We did with Hurricane Dorian 2 years ago, as well as Hurricane Maria back in 17. But the big thing is that it is in very warm waters. In fact, between now and Tuesday, or rather Monday, it's going to be in water temperatures that are going to be between 84 and 86 degrees. And by the time we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be in waters that are going to be at or exceeding 88 degrees. All you need is 81 degrees or warmer sustained for a tropical cyclone, in this case, Hurricane Erin, to not only maintain its structure and its strength, but potentially to intensify. Well, that warm bath water is going to continue in its track all the way through Thursday. As far as the possibility of tropical storm force winds, well, again, Puerto Rico as well as Turks and Caicos still have the tropical storm watches and warnings, although there's not a very high probability of the tropical storm force winds of at least 39 miles an hour or greater to be along the coastline of the Caribbean islands. It will no doubtedly be as you get closer to the center, but notice as we get towards the end of the 5-day trek, there's a higher probability, possibly 40 to 50% chance of those tropical storm force winds affecting Bermuda. Very low probability. We're talking about maybe 5 to 10% along the outer banks of North Carolina. This is assuming that the National Hurricane Track stays in its fixed position right now. As far as the hurricane force winds, we're talking about 85 all the way up to what it was earlier today of 160. Well, the hurricane force winds, there's no real probability of anywhere in the Caribbean, let alone the Southeast Atlantic coast, but it is just on the edge. As of right now, it doesn't have a probability of the hurricane force winds of Bermuda, but it's really close. And as we get through the weekend, we'll be looking at that likelihood of hurricane force winds affecting Bermuda, even though the trajectory still shows it that it may be skirting west of the Caribbean island. Well, here's the probability between the GFS and the American models. They're pretty much in sync as far as position until we get to Tuesday and they start to advance. The GFS model, the blue one or the northern one, is advancing a little bit faster as far as its turn, but both models are indicating that it is expected to go right in between the U.S. and Bermuda and not make landfall. These are the winds. Now, the wave heights, well, we're looking at maybe 5 to 10 feet wave heights off the coast of the Caribbean islands, but this is what we're going to be watching for here in the Carolinas. By the time we get to Wednesday morning, well, the European model is indicating that we may be far away, but from pretty much from the Space Coast of Florida all the way up through Georgia and the Carolina coastlines, we could have wave heights of 5 to 10 feet. We're still talking about well off the coast, but as it gets a little bit further, the European model is indicating that those wave heights may be exceeding 5 to 10 to 15 feet off the coast of the Outer Banks, but we're still talking off the coast. Well, that's one model. Now we have to look at the GFS models to see if it's in the same line. The GFS model, keep in mind that it's going to make its turn north a little bit sooner, but it's going to be a lot stronger. And even though the wave heights are indicating from the Caribbean still about maybe 5 to 10 foot heights, the wave heights are the same when it gets along our coastline. So even though the GFS model is indicating a far stronger hurricane, the wave height intensity as far as the Carolina coast, still about maybe 5 to 10 feet. Now, what's the big picture? We do not have really any warnings right now. There is a low risk for rip currents along the, pretty much in the Grand Strand along Georgetown County. But you go up into the Outer Banks, pretty much from Hatteras all the way up to Elizabeth City, they have a moderate risk. This is not involving Hurricane Erin yet. But as we get closer towards the end of the weekend, the beginning of next week, as Hurricane Erin makes its way in between us and Bermuda, there's likely going to be, at the very least, moderate risk rip currents all up and down the Carolinas and exceeding likely to high risk as we get towards the middle and end of next week. Now keep in mind, it's the middle of August. We're not really ramping up that high yet until the next 2 weeks and then going into the first 2 weeks of September. So while there's a lot of activity that is ramping up now that we're reaching the peak of hurricane season, it really starts to kick into gear when we get into September, and most of the activity comes in from either off the West African coast or in the central Atlantic and makes its way towards the U.S. This is the predictability of the chance of named storms. Doesn't mean landfall, but the possibility of named storms, and it averages out over the last 100 years. Bottom line is this: the trajectory from the National Hurricane Center, even though the intensity from Monday to Thursday is indicating as little as 115 to as high as 150 mile an hour winds, Category 3 to Category 4 hurricane, it is projection right now still between our coast and Bermuda. Is there going to be change? There's going to be change, but there's no indication yet that Hurricane Erin is going to be heading towards the Southeast Atlantic coastline as a landfall. We still have a couple days before we can be out in the clear, but a lot of the models are indicating that at this point we're not expecting a landfall. To wrap up again, Hurricane Erin, a Category 4 hurricane with winds at 150 gusting to 195. It's still moving westerly, but we're going to be watching this, of course, carefully as we go through the coming days. This will very likely re-intensify to a Category 5 between tonight and then through tomorrow night. We'll continue with updates here on our streaming services on WLTX Plus, as well as the updates on News 19 during the evening, in the morning, and during noon. And we'll make sure we get you the information as soon as we get it. But for now, for News 19 Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Erin. Stay with us. We'll keep you advised.